Welcome to another episode of Subject to Change. This is Chad.
This is Matt.
How you doing today, Matt?
I'm feeling a cold coming on, or already on.
That's not good.
If you can tell by my, voice. Ugh. Like last week, over the weekend, I recorded a song with my old bandmate, and I, destroyed my throat because I'm so out of practice. Because I don't scream all the time anymore.
Did that cause it? I forgot about that.
I think it exacerbated it, yeah, because Saturday night we started recording it, and I was screaming until like 2 in the morning, and then I went to bed. I woke up, I had a sore throat, and then we had to finish the song, so I had to scream more on Sunday. And then I was like, okay, it'll be fine, I'll just drink some warm tea or something, and, But then Monday I woke up and I was more, like, the sore throat was still kind of there, but it didn't feel like a cold sore throat. Mm-hmm. I was like, whatever, it'll go away. And then Tuesday morning I woke up and I was congested and coughing and just fucking bleh. And that's persisted to today. So yeah. Plus my niece has a cold now too, so that's no fun. But how are you?
I'm pretty good.
Physically?
Yeah, physically okay. I do have a little bit of a stiff neck, but other than that, I feel pretty good.
Quit sleeping on the floor, on the ground out in the middle of nowhere.
I felt better when I did that. When I came back to my own bed is when I started to hurt.
Do you sleep on an air mattress or like a?
Yeah, it's a pad, sleeping pad, inflatable.
Not on the woods. I mean here at your house.
No, I have a regular mattress here.
I've never been in your room.
Yeah. I have a regular human mattress.
Regular human mattress. Not a dog bed.
Regular person mattress, yeah.
Anything that you've been mulling over or anything that catch your interest this week?
I've still been thinking about what we talked about last week, about the sort of downsides of prosperity, and I've been refining my thoughts about that this week. I still want to write about it. I think I mentioned last week that I'm going to write an essay.
Really?
For my blog that...
You should probably
involves that.
You should send that into a couple newspapers. See if you can get it as an op-ed.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. It's going to be like half my normal trip report sort of piece.
Well,
half.
If you write it, if you can put those two things together, like your nature writing, along with like an editorial about that, I think it would be pretty. Pretty good.
No, thanks. I'm glad you think so. I haven't done that yet on the blog, partially because when I started the blog, I started writing about this, I specifically didn't want to do that kind of writing.
Yeah. What made you want to change that?
Partly that I just I've kind of done a lot of similar blog posts about my overnight backpacking trips, and I still want to write about them, but there's not a whole lot new to write about, especially with the kind of trip that I took. Yeah. The last couple trips I've taken, I'm not sure that they were worth writing about the way I normally write about them. Mm-hmm. But I still kind of want to write something, and I just figured I would try to get out some thoughts on other things, and I just want to see how people react to it and see if people like it. If they don't, I'll stop doing it. But if I get a good response, I have a couple other ideas for other essays that I want to write.
Yeah, I'd always encourage like trying to write for like the local paper or something too, because I know that a lot of them they're not necessarily hurting for content, but having a wider range of content wouldn't hurt. But
and I think that's the sort of thing that most nature and travel writers end up doing. There's always like some kind of socio-political point or philosophical point that they're trying to make. Yeah. And like I said, I originally didn't want to do that. I just wanted to write about pure experiences in nature. And
which you don't have to abandon that. I mean,
no.
Not every trip is going to warrant that level of like introspection or reflection. But
and I think the difference for me is that I'm not bringing in something. I'm not trying to shoehorn in something that doesn't have anything to do with my outdoor experiences just to use. I'm not using my outdoor experiences as a platform for my views about other things. I'm talking about something that I think does have something to do with with my experiences outdoors and what they've taught me and how they relate to this problem that I see in the world. So I think it's a fair enough thing to write about on the blog. We'll see how it goes.
And speaking of writing, this past week I've been working triple time on my my horror blog. I restarted that. I know I mentioned it in our writing talk. Like you mentioned your nature blog, and I mentioned my horror blog that I started this year. And I started a new story. It's more crime noir. It's partially a detective story, partially a horror story, as it gets farther and farther into it. And I started a week from this recording, and I've already written 25,000 words, which is like 3,000 words a day or something around there.
A lot of words a day.
Yeah.
More words a day than I can write.
So that's been fun, just fleshing that idea out. I always feel like once I can start something, like once that spark is lit, I can just crank it out. But trying to get that fuse lighted is the hardest part. Because it was months between this and my last writing endeavor since like March. So it's been about 6 months. But yeah, so I've been spending my time on that. I did start my new job, working at GameStop as a senior guest associate.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a key holder, which means I open and close the store, and I'm the head honcho whenever the big boss isn't there. So that'll be nice once I get the learning curve out of the way. But kind of a segue into that, since I work at a gaming store, is I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of piggybacking on our discussion from last week about creature comforts and what that's done to our society. And I wanted to bring up the phenomenon of video game streaming and like competitive gaming and all that sort of thing, and just internet careers in general, since most video game streamers are internet careers.
Yeah.
And just
if they're lucky.
Yeah, and the kind of impact that that's had on internet culture and things like that. And before we get into it, I thought I'd lay down some groundwork on a little bit of history.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Let's.
Because I wrote down a bunch of stuff in preparation for this talk. Twitch.tv, which is one of the biggest streaming services online, was created in 2011. It was an offshoot of another website called like Jacob.com or something, which was streaming. But Twitch, their parent site was a bunch of different things, and then Twitch was an offshoot just for gaming. But then Twitch became a bunch of different things again, because they have video games, but they also have lifestyle.
Yeah. I saw something about that recently.
Lifestyle.
I thought it was only video games still.
Lifestyle streaming, esports streaming, and a bunch like podcasts and other things like that. And since I brought up esports, I'll just
I have a question about Twitch, really quick.
Yeah, sure.
Because I've never used Twitch, and I don't watch anybody on Twitch. Does it have a built-in way for people to support the content creators, or do they have to use Patreon as a third?
It's a built-in subscription system.
Okay.
So most of the subscriptions are about $5, and that's you subscribe to the specific person, and they get that money, and there's also like a Twitch Pro, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Where you get extra user capabilities. And then Twitch does a bunch of like things where they give out free, like if you're a Amazon Prime person, because I think Amazon owns Twitch now. Then you can get a free Twitch subscription and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, but you subscribe to the individual person, and there's tiers too.
I was going to ask if there's tiers like Patreon. Do the content creators get to choose what the tiers are? Okay.
Yeah, they get to choose the tiers and what you get from the tiers. Yeah. A lot of the content creators I've seen, it's usually different emotes for the chats.
Yeah.
And some people like make their own emotes. Like one guy that I have thought about subscribing to, but I haven't yet. He has like a whole wide range of emoticons or little pictures and for the chat that are of his face.
I have seen that because there is something that I watch on Twitch, but I forgot. I'll tell you later.
Okay. So back to what I was saying about I brought up esports, and esports is just essentially video game sports, competitive gaming, and people might have seen that. I think ESPN has done a little bit of it like over the summer months.
Yeah, I believe so.
And it's kind of been gaining traction.
Didn't ESPN used to do StarCraft?
I think that they did. That's not in my notes though, so
I don't know. I haven't. I've never watched video games on ESPN, but
it's kind of like an ESPN Ocho type thing. It's not like it's on ESPN 2 or whatever,
Yeah.
but still, it being on an actual platform where normal sports are kind of gives it some validity. But I'm just going to run through a couple things for people who don't know what they are. I'm just going to go through a couple types of games, some competitions, and some other just quick. I was going to say factoids, but you told me that factoid doesn't mean what we think it means, at least in the original usage. But so
it means something that resembles a fact but is actually untrue, even though most people use factoid to mean a small little fact.
Yeah. So a couple different gaming types. There's a MOBA, which is a multiplayer online battle arena. People might have heard of the games Dota or Dota 2, League of Legends, Smite. These are all these games where you play on a squad with a bunch of people and it's like top down. FPS, which is a first-person shooter like Call of Duty, Halo, Counter-Strike, Overwatch. Fighting games like Street Fighter or Super Smash Bros. On Nintendo. Battle Royale games, which have become really popular the past couple of years, like Apex Legends, Fortnite, or PlayerUnknown's Battleground, which is PUBG. Card games like Hearthstone, which is really popular. And RTS, or real-time strategy games like StarCraft or Warcraft. Those are really popular games. And some notable competitions that are done with that are the League of Legends World Champions, the Dota 2 International, EVO, which is a big fighting game competition, the Extreme Masters, which has a bunch of different games, and they all have really large payouts, like millions of dollars for winning the competition, kind of like how, baseball, football, basketball players' contracts are in the millions. Like, they get a lot of money for these. The earliest known competition was in 1972, with a space combat game called Space War, where two people would fight each other and try and destroy their ship. But esports really gained a lot of traction in the 90s with games like Street Fighter 2 because of the competitive aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then also in the 90s was when the Nintendo World Championships became a thing. Blockbuster Video had their own video game competitions. And then another really big one was QuakeCon, which is around the video game Quake, which was made by id, who made Doom in the early 90s.
I always forget about Quake.
Yeah, Quake was really, really huge in the 90s for competitive gaming. And then one country that really sees a lot more from esports than the United States
is South Korea. They
have, their esports players are seen as people would see LeBron James or Tom Brady.
Yeah.
They are lauded for their skill in playing video games, which we as Americans, this is kind of shifting, as we'll get into, about the culture of streaming and online culture and internet careers and stuff like that, which we want to talk about. But in America, that's kind of seen as really? You play video games for a living?
Yeah.
Where in Korea, they're held up as superstars.
Right.
And the reason for that, one of the main reasons, is in the 1990s there was a bit of a economic crash in Southeast Asia, so a lot of people lost their jobs. And one thing that people did in lieu of working was play video games. So people just did that all the time, and then it exploded into this whole industry of competitive gameplay, and leagues came up and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I actually looked up the most recent winnings from Korea from their esports winners, and they topped out at like $1.2 million
Wow.
for winnings.
Just for winnings?
Mm-hmm.
That's wow.
Mm-hmm. That's not if they're in their contract.
That's not subscriptions to their channels. That's not advertising on their channels.
Not advertising.
That's not wow.
or any other.
That's just winnings, huh?
Just winnings.
Damn.
And then we can kind of transition with the cost of this, or the amount of money that people make, because I kind of want to go and talk about in relation to our last discussion about the comfort and how that kind of shifts society. Video game streaming, which is related to esports, but not exactly the same. Where esports is more competitive and more about like, televised competitions like a football game or a baseball game or something like that. Video game streaming is more of like an individualized interaction between the streamer and the audience.
Yeah, it can be competitive.
It can. A lot of the games that they play are competitive,
yeah.
but it's not necessarily they're in a league playing against another team,
right?
Trying to win some winnings. This is more of like this is their career,
right?
They just go online and they play 8 hours a day, like Fortnite or whatever. And the three most, the three highest paid streamers on Twitch, which this is changing because Ninja, who's one of the people, and Shroud, who's another person, they don't actually do Twitch anymore. They moved to Microsoft's Mixer streaming service, which I just found out today, at least Shroud. But when they were on Twitch, Ninja's revenue for a single year was $5 million just from streaming video games. Now, that I don't think that includes his like many advertising things or any of that sort of stuff. I believe that's strictly from his subscriptions on Twitch. Wow. And it said that he gets 80,000 viewers. I think that was for a week. Like every week he gets that many, but I kind of fudged up my notes here. But he gets a lot of viewers all the time. At least he did when he was still on Twitch. Shroud, who's another really prolific streamer, he made over $3 million last year. And Tim the Tap Man made almost $3 million last year. Just from streaming.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And when people think about that, it's like, that's nuts. They're just sitting in front of their computer with a camera pointed at them.
It's just something that was unthinkable when we were kids.
Yeah.
Like if you would have told me when I was a kid playing video games that
you could make millions of dollars doing this.
That 10 or 15 or 20 years in the future, I could be a millionaire just from sitting at home and playing video games. I would have thought you were absolutely nuts.
Yeah. But it's
even like probably, I don't know, even 10 years ago, that seemed crazy to me.
2009? Wow. 2009 doesn't feel like 10 years ago. Jesus.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago.
But yeah, no. So yeah, 2009 was a couple years before Twitch even existed.
Yeah.
YouTube was still sort of in its infancy. And it didn't have the same kind of base of viewers that it does now, or the same kind of career paths. Like people are career YouTubers. Like that's a career now.
Oh yeah.
And the shift from the traditional entertainment sectors of like television or radio or film or theater even has kind of transitioned into this more internet related, where you're either making YouTube content or you're using online music services to put your music out there to propagate that, or you're streaming video games or a bunch of other things. Like people stream different podcasts on these services, which podcasting is sort of becoming its own career too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I feel like Joe Rogan, I don't know if he does anything else anymore, except for like sometimes he'll do a stand-up routine.
Yeah, I think he does a little bit. Yeah, and he does his MMA stuff, but for the most part, yeah, he does one almost every day.
Yeah, and
they're
like
3 hours long,
and they get millions of views. Oh, yeah, so it makes perfect sense why he would do something like that.
I mean, I think he has like the biggest reach of anybody on the planet. I think so right now, which is insane.
And just the idea, like we were talking earlier about, like this shift, or earlier last week, this shift in what we deem as important and how that relates to our work life. I know last week we were talking more about just like existential threats and like how people think about their work and what their purpose is in life.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have been shifting that from, manufacturing or doing those sorts of jobs into these more entertainment jobs where people are, these viewers like Shroud. I would watch him the most out of any of these guys because he played the games that I played. Whatever he was playing, if there wasn't a League of Legends competition going on or a Counter-Strike competition going on, because those boosted up like 100,000 viewers, wherever he was the most popular game on the platform.
Just because he had that big
Just
an
because
audience.
he had like 20,000 people following him around.
Yeah.
That's huge. You people like to talk about like celebrity and all that sort of thing. The following that people has, especially in our social media era of Facebook friends and Twitter followers and all this sort of thing, and the kind of impact that can have, and just how the society needs to be, like how it functions with that kind of, concentration on these sort of esoteric career paths, where like 20,000 kids or even adults, because, I'm almost 30 and I watched him. I think he's in his 20s. Just watching this guy play video game really well, for one. I mean, he's really good at what he does,
right.
But like a part of it is just, I guess there's a part of it is a community that's built.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Like you feel like when you're watching him, you're not just watching him, like you're in on it in a way.
Right.
And I feel like that's sort of the thing with a lot of these streaming things, especially with the lifestyle streaming.
Yeah.
The people who just stream their everyday life, which I think that happens more in the Asia market. I see a lot more lifestyle channels from like Koreans, like they're really big into that.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of channels like on YouTube and Twitch and stuff where it's just people vlogging their life. They're not doing anything special, really. They're just like, oh, this is my life. And like Logan Paul, he's one of the most famous YouTubers, and he doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, I've never watched him.
He just, he got popular off of Vine.
Yeah.
And he used that to build a YouTube platform. And he, like, back when I watched, like, two of his videos, he was just vlogging every day for a year. That was his, like, thing. And his vlog wasn't really anything special. Him and his roommate went to the store, did a couple stupid things, and then they came back. Yeah. And I'm like...
Was it entertaining to you?
No. Yeah. I mean, his audience is generally younger, like in the preteen range, which he's gotten some flack for because of some of his content. But it's just like, how did you think to do that, and why is that such a popular thing?
It's weird. It's something that that's another thing that I never would have thought that there would be an audience for such a thing. Like if you had asked me 10 years ago, or you'd told me that 10 years ago, that people would be vlogging their daily life and that they would have millions of subscribers and people that are watching them every day, I would have thought you were crazy. And even I probably would have thought you were crazy even up until I started watching a vlog. But then now I kind of understand the appeal of it, though. I've only ever watched one vlog, one person's vlog anyway. There's a guy who is part of one of the backpacking channels that I watch. Adventure Archives is the backpacking channel, one of my favorites. And there's one of the guys on there also has a daily vlog, or he's kind of gotten away from it, but an almost daily vlog. And I started watching that a couple years ago. And I think it was partly because I already liked the backpacking videos and kind of like knew quote unquote knew him through those, that made it appealing to me. So it's hard to say if I would have gotten into it without that. But I really see the appeal of it then. When I started watching it, I think I went back a year and just binge watched every day of the last year that he put up. And there's something really comforting about it almost.
Is that what you think the appeal is?
Well,
that was going to be my
well,
follow-up.
I definitely think that the community thing is big. Like he's not big on it. He's not huge on interacting with the audience, but there's the same people show up in the comment sections all the time, and I think you do build a sense of community around that stuff. Not just the person who's vlogging, but the people who are watching it. But there's something like relaxing about just watching somebody go about their daily business in a well produced way, because his videos are really well produced. They're not like somebody's home videos. I mean, he's very good at making videos.
Yeah.
And I don't think they'd be nearly as entertaining if they were just, some random person with a
Camcorder.
Shaky video camera. Yeah, I mean, they're like, movie quality. But I'm not even sure exactly what's so comforting and what's so relaxing about it. I guess it's just like checking in on a friend every day almost.
Yeah. That's what it feels like when you do it. I don't really watch vlogs is the thing. Like, for me, when I watch content creators on YouTube, it's usually because they give some sort of actual content.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm like that with everybody else. This is the only one I watch.
Yeah, like there's and I don't think a lot of people watch a bunch of different vloggers. I think
Probably
they have
not.
like their couple that they watch.
Yeah.
And there is one guy that I follow, or that I'm subscribed to on YouTube, who builds computers.
Yeah.
That's like his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he does a podcast every week and all that sort of stuff. But every once in a while, he'll put a vlog up of him and his wife doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch them. I don't like go like, oh yay, the next one's out. I'm just like, yeah, see what they're doing. Just mostly because he's more wealthy than me.
Yeah.
He's not like uber wealthy. He's just, like probably upper middle class.
Yeah.
So he gets to go do stuff, and I get to see a part of LA where he lives, and it's kind of like, oh, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, in relation to that community feeling, do you think people feel connected to, or want to feel connected to, these people through their through their vlogs or their streaming or anything like that, because their own lives are so lacking in some sort of either community from their own people, or some sort of lack of meaning, that they need to latch on to someone on the internet? Like, do you think if everyone had a more meaningful existence outside of the internet, they wouldn't necessarily need or want to find a community in a backpacker, or a guy who is just going out to dinner with his wife on his birthday?
That's a good question. Before I answer that really quick, I thought of something else I wanted to say, which is that another part of the big appeal is it's just interesting to see how somebody else goes about their daily life. I wonder that about people.
There's a bit of a voyeurism.
Yeah, there is. I wonder that about people in my own life. I think about that sometimes. Like, I wonder what that person, I only know that person through work, or I only know that person, through school. I wonder what their daily life is like. And a vlog gives you, a very voyeuristic view into somebody's life like that. And it's, I think that's just, there's almost something like inherently interesting about that, because we like to compare ourselves.
Yeah, but it's like consensual voyeurism.
Yeah,
because they know they're being filmed.
Right.
They're presenting their life to the world. But
right.
I mean, no, go ahead.
But thinking about your question here,
do you but before you go on, would you say it's more related to a lack in their life, or just that curiosity that you just brought up? Do you think it's more related to the curiosity, or do you think it's some sort of mix of the two?
I'm sure it's a mix of the two, and I think that it depends on the person. I mean, I think there's different types here. I think for some people, I do think that it's just they don't have enough community or enough connections or enough stuff going on in their own life. But I don't know. My guess, because I have no idea. I've never looked at any data or tried to do any of this. I've never tried to find out scientifically. But my guess is that there are less of those people than you would think.
That need it because they don't have it in their own life?
Yeah. My guess is there's fewer of those people than one might assume just looking at it kind of on the surface.
I actually think it's the reverse.
You think there's more?
I think there are more people. I think it's more prevalent that they feel like their life is lacking, and then they see someone who's living a more glamorous or whatever life.
Yeah.
and they latch onto it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why like reality TV shows are so popular.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing another person's life, one that they want to look into because it's interesting. But the reason they stay, you know, you can always peek in and be like, oh, that's interesting, and then go away. But the people who stay subscribed and who follow these people through their lives, I think there's something inherently missing that maybe they don't know, or just from their own community or life that they're not really getting. And one thing I wanted to bring up in relation to that is, like I said just a couple minutes ago, that Logan Paul's audience is largely young children, you know, about probably 10 to 15. Okay. Girls and boys. But I'd say if I was like a 13-year-old boy, right, watching YouTube, and there was this guy who's older than me. When I was young, I had a skewed notion of how old 22 or 23 was, you know. It's like, and he's talking to me, you know, through the camera, like, oh man, you're a part of the Low Gang, and like his, you know, followers, like you know, you're one of us, and you get the merch and all that, like to make me feel like I'm a part of something, because maybe I'm bullied at school, or maybe I don't really have a cool like a connection with people. Yeah. It doesn't even necessarily have to be that as bad as like being bullied, but just not like really feeling connected or really respected by older people. Yeah. And to get that kind of connection from someone who's obviously older than you. Be like, man, you and I, we're bros or whatever, through that medium. And, you know, you can comment and stuff, and maybe he says something back, or he follows you on Twitter, or like getting that sort of thing. I really think, especially for younger people, and this kind of like goes on the older they are and the more that this becomes prevalent in people's lives, is that feeling like you're important because you're connected to someone that you find is important. Yeah. I think is really related into that, especially with the younger audiences. I know that for me, as someone who, you know, is in his late 20s, who kind of grew up the same way that this grew up through its infancy and everything, I not really say I'm starstruck, but it's just like, you're famous for what you do. And to interact with you and have you interact with me feels good. Because it's like, wow, you're this guy that I really respect. Yeah. And even though all you're really doing is sitting at your home playing a video game like I'm doing half the time. Right. Because you have this like following around you, it makes you elevated. And it kind of, since there isn't that kind of feeling in my life that I mean anything to really anybody else. Yeah. To give my affection to you in whatever way that is, like through subscriptions or comments or whatever, it elevates myself because I'm elevating you. And I think that is a more prevalent thing than people want to say, because just because you necessarily don't feel that way doesn't mean that a lot of young men and a lot of young women don't do that. Because you kind of see that kind of, you know, deification of celebrities.
I don't doubt that goes on. My guess is that happens more within the part of the community that actually interacts with these people. But my guess is that most people lurk and never interact. Like my guess is that any given vlog, you might have 10% of the people who watch it commenting regularly. It's probably less than that. Yeah. And 90+% are just kind of casually watching during their commute, or, you know, while they exercise or at work or whatever they might be doing.
So do you think of it more, I don't know the last time you saw The Truman Show, but do you think of it more as like, that's just a form of entertainment and people just kind of plug into it, as opposed to them being like, you know, actually connected to it, like how I described? You think there's a larger percentage of people who are just like passively...
That would be my guess. Yeah, I mean, I'm certain that both of those things are going on. I think, sometimes even within the same person. You know.
No, I think so too. I'm just curious. I would be curious to see how the breakdown is.
Yeah, I'm really curious now too. I'd be curious. I'm really interested to know, you know, the average. You know, how many people are just watching it as entertainment. You know, because I'm not a very good example of this, but the one vlog that I watch, I don't think I've ever commented on it. You know, I watch it while I'm at work, or maybe while I'm on the treadmill.
How would you react if you bumped into that guy?
Oh, I would want to have a beer with him, and I'd want to say hi to him, and I have quite a bit of stuff in common with him, and yeah.
Okay.
I would.
I was just curious.
Yeah, I would. I think I would enjoy talking to him.
Because there are a couple people that I follow online that I'm like, you know, quote unquote infatuated with just
Yeah.
because of their perceived status.
Mm-hmm.
And if I ever had the chance to meet them or, talk with them, I'd be a little giddy just because of their place in society.
Yeah.
But this is kind of getting away from where we started.
Yeah. I actually wanted to ask you something else when we were, if you want to kind of take another little turn
Sure.
in the conversation.
Yeah, we'll go over.
We're talking about video game competition. Have you ever played any video games competitively?
Not for money. I have played some like friendly, competitions, but not for money. When I was younger, the big thing was Halo. That was the big competitive thing. Counter-Strike's been big for a long time too, but Halo 2 was when I was really getting into, getting good at video games.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my friends would always talk about like, man, wouldn't it be great to, make money off doing this? And, the competitions were there, and Major League Gaming, which is a like an esports thing, league, was really big into Call of Duty competitions and Halo competitions, and watch them on TV back on Tech TV and G4 TV.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always something that I wanted to like break into.
Mm-hmm.
My friend in college, one of my roommates, he was like really into MLG gaming, or not MLG gaming, just MLG, because Major League Gaming makes no sense. Anyway,
ATM machine.
Yeah. So he would play like the competitive side of the game to kind of like just get into that sort of mode.
Yeah.
But there are actually, more recently, there are games that, anyone can play where if you're good enough and if you have enough Twitch followers, essentially, you can enter the competition. Like Apex Legends, every couple months, like during their seasons, which is an FPS battle royale, they have player competitions, and you don't go to a different place. I mean, well, one of their competitions was, but like people were playing at home, and they were in a competition.
Yeah.
But I never felt that I was good enough, like especially for like the really competitive games.
Well, you
like,
have to be ridiculously good.
Oh yeah, like the Street Fighters and things like that. These people, the people who are in esports, they train a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean that's their job.
Yeah. It's like a football player.
Yeah.
All they do, they eat, breathe, sleep, dream
Yep.
football. The esport players, if you really care, and you know,
and you have to.
yeah,
I mean, like to keep up with the other people who,
especially
who are at
like
that level,
like the people in the leagues, like the CS:GO players, like they're competing against people around the world.
Yeah.
Like what I was talking about before about the Koreans,
Mm-hmm.
South Koreans, and their esports players who are like held up as like Major League Baseball or football or whatever players. You know, the competition's fierce.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to spend 10 hours a day playing this map in CSGO over and over and over again, and playing with your squad and making sure you got like all that shit tied down. And that's something I could never really get into, mostly because I never thought I was good enough. But
yeah, I've just never had the time to dedicate to something like that.
And even if I, you know, in high school was like, you know, I'm going to do this. My dad wouldn't have let me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like, that's not, you know, you're wasting your time. That's not a real thing.
Right.
Do your homework, you know, get a real job. And I'm like, this is a real job. You know, I bet if I was 18, 17, if I was in high school now, when Twitch and all this stuff is huge, I still don't think I could convince my dad to be like, hey, I'm going to be a video game streamer.
Right.
Like, no, you're not. You're going to go get a real job. Like, this is a real job. This guy makes $1 million a year.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you were making $1 million, your dad would finally be convinced.
Yeah. Well, he'd have to let me play 8 hours
in order to get to that point. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to drop out of high school and start streaming Fortnite.
Yeah. Do you watch any streamers? You said you did, right?
I do every once in a while. My internet isn't really good enough now to watch any live streams, which sucks. But there are a couple people that I was watching over the summer, the beginning of the year through the summer, who were competitive Apex Legends players.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was really into that game and I was trying to get really good. And when the ranking system came out in that game, I, played it a lot and tried to get better. And I was like, oh, I'd love to be in one of these competitions, all that sort of thing. But there's a couple of different people I watch. One guy, I started watching him a couple years ago because he played Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I started watching him was just because he did a lot of speed runs.
Yeah.
And
surprisingly entertaining.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why I kept watching him, is because he could play this game that I thought I did really well at.
Yeah.
A million times better.
Yeah.
And a million times quicker. Like, he could beat a game that, my first playthrough took 60 hours in an hour.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how the hell do you do that? So you want to watch them do it because they're just so good at what they do. A part of the whole video game streaming appeal, I think, for a lot of people is seeing really good players play games.
Yeah, which is similar to why you want to watch an athlete play any sport, because they're so good at it.
Because they're good at it.
And a lot of people who've also played the sport and they know how difficult the sport is, and it's just, it's interesting to watch somebody who's really good at something that you're interested in.
Yeah, and you can really see like the time and dedication they put into it. But that's also the other thing that, like, about esports in general that's kind of like dismissed, is that people in the physical sports realm of sports say that, oh, video games, they're not real sports.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it, but people have to train just as hard, spend as much time. And
there's clearly a difference because, one of them obviously is involving physical activity and the other's not, and there's plenty of arguments for the physical activity sports being better for you, but they're also worse for you in certain ways. You're not getting a concussion playing Dota. Hopefully not.
Unless you smash your head on your keyboard. But
I was I never thought the speedrun thing was interesting until I played Bloodborne, and I think I beat the game like twice, and then I wanted to see how fast I could beat it, and I beat it in one sitting. I beat it in like 3 hours at one point.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, that's fun.
Nowhere near the world record.
Oh yeah, the world record's probably like 42 minutes or
it's
something.
Like, I think the last one I saw was like 54.
Yeah. But then I started watching videos after that. I was like, wow, let me see what other people can do. And I've watched like some original Legend of Zelda speed runs and stuff. And for some reason, you wouldn't think, and I wouldn't think it was interesting either, because when I don't even play video games that much anymore, but when I used to play video games, I was never really interested in watching my friends play. I always wanted to be the one playing. But for some reason, watching people who are really good at them is just entertaining.
See, it's a good thing you brought that up, because when I was in college, one of my roommates was god-awful at video games. I hated when he played video games in the living room.
Yeah.
Because he was so bad. It would just piss me.
You.
It would just piss me off. I'm like, you missed that thing. Mm-hmm. You don't know what you're doing. Ugh. So I always thought that, like, I could never watch someone play video games because it just fucking make me mad, because I would want to play and I'd want to, beat it for them and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But then, seeing these streamers who are really good, it's like, damn, it makes me want to get better.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I would watch the speed runs and stuff, I would go back and try and do some of those things, like in some of my playthroughs, just to try and like speed up my own game and just to test that stuff out. I didn't do, like, some people will do like hours and hours of play testing and stuff for like the different things, or spend years. Like, they're like, the speedrunning community is just a completely different beast that we can go into on a different conversation a different day if you want. But
we don't need to today.
Like, people have been playing a game from like 1997 for 22 years trying to get it as quick as possible.
Oh yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like that guy who has all those records for the original Legend of Zelda. He's been playing that game his whole life. I think.
And it's just like, and like, there are people who say, when they're like, a couple people that I've watched who are like speedrunners, that's all they do, is like, yeah, I've never done a casual playthrough of these games. How like you and I,
they've never done it at all.
Most people, they're just like, as soon as they start the game, they're like, how can I beat this as quick as possible?
Yeah.
They don't even care to play through the story.
Right.
And that kind of baffles me, because, sometimes, like, I'll play a game, the first time I play through it, I'll listen to, like, Resident Evil 2, it just came out again. It was the remake of the classic PlayStation game. The first time I played through it, I, listened to the story. I didn't skip the cutscenes or whatever, and I played through it the 2 times that you do with the 2 different characters, Claire and Leon. I played it through,
Mm-hmm.
long play, normal,
Right.
and then I played through it again, and I was like, okay, how fast can I beat this?
Yeah.
And I beat it. I beat it in like an hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and well, even my long play was really quick too, but my speed run was like an hour and something.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, man, I kind of want to do this again. And I did it again with the other character, and was again like I think I got one close to like right around an hour. And it's just learning the patterns and figuring it out. But you have to spend actual time doing that sort of thing.
Oh.
But there's a bit of an accomplishment
A lot of time.
of like setting your own goals and
Mm-hmm.
all that sort of thing. Like, and that's why I really like the speed running aspect of games, is because people are just like trying to push the boundaries and break the games, and it's just fun to watch the kind of stuff that people can have found or that they do to make the games so fast.
Yeah, I find it very interesting too. So would you ever or have you ever given money to any of those people?
I did support my friend Sam for over a year with his streaming service, or with his channel on Twitch. Because he wanted to stream for a long time, and once he got to a certain threshold you need to get to be able to actually accept money. I was like, yeah, I'll support you. I didn't watch all the times he streamed, mostly because of scheduling reasons. And he didn't really play a lot of the games that I wanted to watch, which is a big thing too. It's like watching a streamer, you're kind of watching a TV show in a way. Like if it's not the right thing, then you're not really going to care.
Yeah.
Like there could be a really good guy. I mean, a guy who's really good at playing, Hearthstone for one. That's a really popular game.
Yeah.
I don't give two shits about that game.
Right.
Like the competitive card games or whatever. So I wouldn't want to watch anyone play it, even if they were the best player. It's not interesting.
Even if they were entertaining. But
there's one guy that I don't subscribe to him. I don't give him money, but that I follow, who plays Call of Duty 4, which is an older game, which doesn't have a lot of subscribers, but he's really good at it. And I haven't played it in a long time, but watching him, he's just really good. And he's really communicative with his audience, which is nice too. That kind of taps into the community thing. Yeah. Like if I comment or something, he'll read it and respond, and it feels like we're having a conversation, which is nice. There's been people that I've wanted to support, but mostly just money. Is the big barrier there.
Yeah.
Not that I wouldn't.
I think that I was just I wonder why people do support and pay money for these people.
I think,
no, go ahead. To answer my own question, I think it's because people feel like they owe them something a lot of the time for giving them free entertainment. If I'm watching a streamer for a couple hours a day for weeks at a time, like they've given me so much free entertainment that eventually I think I should support them. I should give them some money, since I can't do anything else for free. When I go to the movies, I have to pay for it. I have to pay for TV. I have to pay for my own video games. But I feel like that anyway. I've never supported a video game streamer because for the most part I just don't watch video game streaming. But I do try to support. I support that backpacking channel that I was talking about.
Monetarily?
Yeah, on their Patreon. There's a lot of free music. There's a lot of music that you can get for free on Spotify or YouTube, but a lot of times after listening to somebody for a while, I'll buy their album just because I feel like I should. Yeah, I owe them, basically. I feel like I should support them and buy their thing that I've been enjoying.
I've had that feeling
for
too.
Hours and hours. And, like another example, like Sam Harris's podcasts are free. I think everything that he does is still free, right? Or did he do?
Well, his app, part of it is you have to pay for it.
Okay.
And some of his AMA questions are behind a paywall.
Oh, okay. But I've never felt bad about buying one of his books because he's given me so much content for free online. So for me, anyway, a lot of the reason why I would do that is because they're giving me some value, and I want to give something back to them.
And I wonder how much of that. I mean, I feel the same way. I wonder how much of the subscribers also have that model.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Because part of me, before I thought you were going to ask me if I had ever streamed before, which I have.
Yeah.
A couple different games. I streamed Dark Souls a little bit, and I streamed Apex back when I had high-speed internet.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I was like, I don't want to give other people money when I'm also trying to make money as a streamer.
Yeah.
And I wonder if people have the reverse, like saying, I want to be able to make money off of this if they do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to support these other people that I look up to.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think the latter probably happens a lot.
The latter.
I think that happens with other things.
Yeah. It's like, I support you so that when I get into it, people will support me.
Yeah.
Or like,
yeah. I think that's a big motivation.
I think it is too.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, just to go back to like the original idea behind this is that what led to internet careers being such a lucrative thing? Because like I said earlier, there's a couple streamers on these services that were making millions of dollars a year before advertising. Like Ninja, he was on The Masked Singer.
Well, really?
Huh. Which is, a popular late night primetime show of a person who's dressed up in a suit, and then they sing a song, and then the people have to guess who it is. Mm-hmm. They don't ever get it right, from what I've seen.
I've never watched it. Do they give them options, or do they just have to?
They have to guess.
They just have to guess.
Guess completely, yeah.
Oh, that seems impossible.
They get like clues, but they're really esoteric clues. Like the person who's in the mask, like has this monologue where they talk about certain things, and that's supposed to be the clue.
Huh.
Like when Ninja was on there, one of the panel people thought it was PewDiePie.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, I am familiar with him.
Who's also a really
Felix.
popular YouTuber and video game streamer. But he got paid for that probably.
Isn't he the most subscribed YouTuber? Or
well, there's a like Indian company that outpaced him a while ago, but he's I think the only singular person with 100 million subscribers. Yeah,
and he makes a crazy amount of money.
Oh God, yeah,
too.
Yeah. He's ungodly wealthy for being a YouTuber.
Yeah.
But
so are you asking me?
Like, what do you think? Let me just kind of break down a couple of things. So I brought up the Truman Show earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The Truman Show, for those who haven't watched it in a long time or don't know what it is a movie about a guy who's taken at birth and put into this reality show where he's the only one who doesn't know he's in a show. And everyone on the planet essentially watches this guy live his life, which is kind of what we were talking about with the lifestyle streaming and vlogging and stuff, except he doesn't know it.
Right.
And back in the 1990s when that came out, people were like, oh, this is weird. Like, would people really do that?
Yeah.
The whole idea around watching someone live their life. And this is like before reality TV was huge. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was like Road Rules and that sort of thing, but that was really like at the fringes, like MTV.
Yeah.
But at this time, it's like, there would never be a TV show about someone living their life without action or whatever.
Yeah.
20 years later, people are making millions of dollars off of just broadcasting their life to the world. And do you think that there's some sort of societal shift that brought this about, or do you think it's some sort of thing related to, like we were talking before, about how society is becoming more and more comfortable, that people can kind of branch out into these more esoteric career paths?
Yeah.
And do you think maybe it's related to, we talked about this before the podcast, about how certain jobs are just disappearing and people need to find another purpose in life?
Well, I think partly yes to all that stuff. So I think that, well, as far as like why, I think the first question is like, why are people interested in that now? Is that kind of the first part of the question? I think that people have always been interested in that. It's just that we didn't have the technology and or the free time to do it at any other point. I mean, I think that if you introduce the technology into any other point in history, I think people would be doing the same thing, because I think that we are just naturally curious about each other. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way we like to compare ourselves. Even when we're not consciously doing that, we're always comparing ourselves against our peers and our neighbors and rich people and poor people and famous people and
That's why
non-famous people.
E-news and all that sort of stuff is so popular.
Yeah.
People want to know.
Yeah. And like there's obviously a sense in which that can be a bad thing. You know, it can quickly become a negative thing, both for you to compare yourself and, you know, to the person that you're looking at. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You know, I think there's just I think it's just normal to some extent.
General curiosity.
Yeah. So I don't think that it's really a new like urge in people to want that. But I do think that a big part of it is that we just have the free time to do that now. Yeah, like we've been talking about. There's, you know, we live in a society where we generally have a decent amount of free time because, you know, of our conveniences but I think the big thing is that we can multitask better now.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of people watch this kind of stuff when they're doing something else. Like I would be really interested in the numbers on that too. But my guess is that people are watching all of these vlogs and video game streamers and whatever else we're talking about. I think people are doing this while they're commuting, while they are exercising, while they're making dinner, while they're eating dinner, while they're working. And, you know, 20 years ago, you couldn't really do that stuff. Really, 10 years ago, it was difficult. But now everybody's got a smartphone. You know, almost everybody's got decent internet.
Yeah.
It's really easy now to multitask. I mean, that's been, maybe I partly just say that because that's how I do this stuff. Because, like I said, I don't do this a lot, but, you know, I occasionally watch, actually, what I occasionally watch, I watch some Magic the Gathering players on Twitch, and I watch the vlog, and I occasionally watch like those speedrunners or something. But I only ever do that stuff while I'm at work, making dinner, or on the treadmill. Like I never do that stuff when I could be doing something else.
Yeah.
Like I never just sit down in my chair, you know, in front of my TV and watch that stuff. And my guess is that a lot of other people are similar.
Okay, that talks more to like the people who are ingesting the stuff, but what about to the people who are creating?
The people who are creating. Well, yeah, you have to live in a pretty prosperous society in the first place to even be able to do that stuff. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Well, partially, but another part of it, I'm curious more about the societal lens of it being relatively okay to do that, you know, to where like it's still kind of seen as like a little weird, but the newer generations are seeing it as normal. Like what does that what does that say about society, that people who are essentially like consensual voyeurism as a career, not necessarily about the people who are watching it or whatever, but the people who see that as like, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
Like, what does that say about them, and what does that say about the society that says, oh, you know, I think a part of it is about that inherent curiosity that people want to have that kind of entertainment, but on the other end, the people who want to give that kind of entertainment. Because I feel like if you could have done this in the 80s, from the 80s until now, I think that would have been possible. But I think if you go back any farther, people are very, very private and very like, I don't want anyone to know anything about me.
Okay, I see. I guess I see now what your angle is on that.
Yeah. Like the societal shift to where watching somebody eat dinner and talk to you is seen as quote unquote normal.
Yeah. Well, I think you're probably right about that. Like, people would have been very wary of that up until the age of social media and things, where people are just used to sharing everything, and people are used to other people having access to their private lives. And I mean, the nice thing, well, how do I want to put this? I mean, the difference between, you know, what we're talking about in the Truman Show, well, there's two differences. One of them is that it's consensual.
Yeah.
Which makes a huge difference. And the other thing is that for the most part, these people aren't sharing everything. You know, they're choosing which parts of their life to share.
Well, I mean, we
them.
haven't talked about it in this, but
Yeah.
you know, the whole other side. I mean, you probably know where I'm going.
Yeah.
About the whole sex side.
Oh yeah.
Of, I mean, is that where you thought I was going to go?
No, I thought you were just going to go to the people who just literally record everything.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, the people who pick and choose what they share, but then like the people who's like, oh, you know, people are still private. Like there's a whole range of women and a whole industry, women and men,
men too,
and you know, transgender and everything, who sell the image of their body.
Yeah.
You know, through webcams and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, webcamming has been a lot older than streaming everything else.
It has a pretty long history.
But that is also seen now in a different light, where cam girls and things like that aren't seen as pariahs. Yeah. I mean, they still are, but there's a growing wave of support for that career path, as it were.
Well, I mean, I have a different opinion about that than I do about most of the stuff that we're talking about.
Well, I think the general point that I wanted to get to and have your view on it is, I guess, what part of the society is shifting to allow those career paths on the internet through gaming or lifestyle or sex to become more and more normalized? Is it because we are in a convenience society where that is more capable of gaining money, or is it some sort of social change where viewing life through somebody else's eyes essentially is seen as entertainment? Is it a mixture of a couple different things? Is it just because the internet through social media has just become so ingrained in our lives, like you described, that people are so used to sharing their private life that giving somebody $5, $10, $15 a month to help them do that, you know, to share their life to everyone in their circle is more normalized than it would have been 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with people getting used to, like I said, people getting used to sharing and other people and seeing other people's lives like that. And I think it just has kind of, I mean, it's happened fast, but I do think it's happened gradually. And as that becomes more and more normal, then more and more people are going to latch onto that. And, you know, like any other endeavor in life, some people are going to find a way to make a career out of it. And if other people find value in it, they're going to part with some of their money to make sure that continues to happen.
And not to say that I agree with what I'm about to say inherently, but do you think that shift from a more inherent private life to a more public life, like as society goes from, you know, more insulating for what you want to share to being more public, do you think that shift has more negatives or more positives, or do you think there's a good balance there?
That's a good question, and I think there's definitely a healthy balance of both.
Because before you go on, there are a lot of YouTubers and content creators who get burnt out.
Yeah.
And they feel like they don't know what privacy is anymore. Like, that's a huge complaint that I've seen.
Yeah.
Is that people feel like their fans, when they get too crazy with it, are just invading their life too much.
Yeah, well, even I'll get to my answer. Even the one guy that I do watch, he's never really interacted that much with the commenters, but there was a time when he made a couple vlogs about having to step back and not really read the comments at all because they were just getting to him too much.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a big following, and I mean, like, I've looked at the comments and they're almost, I would say they're 99% not malicious, but just the fact that people were commenting about everything in his life started to get to him, you know. And I think one of the things that bothered him, and this would bother me, is just people like giving him suggestions about stuff like, oh, you know, I saw you know that fridge that you have in the background. Now that's not really a good fridge. You should get this refrigerator, or you know, you should be doing things this way, or why are you doing things that? Why do you have that thing? Why don't you replace that? Or that stuff. And I would say that most of those people were well intentioned, but all that stuff just got to him, and I can see why, because I think that would get to me too. And well, that is a downside to it. That is a downside to letting everybody into your life, because you have to accept the bad with the good. You like it when people tell you something that's helpful or that makes you feel good,
or when they praise you,
right? But there's no way to sort that stuff out from the stuff that you don't want ahead of time. You can say, okay, hey, everybody, don't leave any bad comments, or you can say, I'm only gonna, I'm gonna delete all the negative comments or anything. But there's no way to do it beforehand. You have to just look at the comments. But anyway, that's kind of one of the downsides to it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a nice balance of good things and bad things. I mean, I don't see anything inherently wrong with people being entertained by watching somebody else live their life. Don't see anything necessarily wrong with somebody choosing to share that and to make money doing that.
Do you think, though, that, especially in the culture we're in right now, where there's a lot of scrutiny being put on people for mistakes that they might have made, do you think that living in a culture where people are so open that it leads to a lot more mental stress than maybe 20 years ago? Because you're not worried about what your neighbors necessarily think about you, because your life has that modicum of privacy that's gone now.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, this just kind of applies to social media and the internet in general. But yeah, when we're talking about this kind of stuff, anything that you do is potentially forever. It's potentially out. I mean, you can, if you get to it before anybody else has downloaded it, you can get rid of it. But potentially anything that you put out there is out there forever. Any mistakes that you make are out there forever. Any slip up that you make, any instance of you putting your foot in your mouth, it's out there forever. And I mean, I don't think I need to give specific examples. Everybody can supply their own of situations where somebody made some offhanded comment that people took wrong, and there was a witch hunt. And
or even they said something that was societally okay at the time, but things have changed, and people look back on their life and say, "Oh, you fucked up 10 years ago. We're gonna burn you down now."
And I mean, I think all of that stuff is awful. I mean, I'm a huge opponent of all of that
cancel culture,
and all the witch hunting and
virtue signaling,
justice mobs and things like that go on online. I think that's a huge problem. And yeah, that is definitely one of the downsides to all of this, is that if you say the wrong thing at the wrong time, people can potentially ruin your career. I mean, that's always been the case too. It's not something new. I mean, people have always been people.
Yeah.
And, things have always been like that. But before, you'd have lots of plausible deniability. Before the internet, you could say, "Oh, I didn't say that thing," or "I meant this," or "this person heard me wrong," or anything like that.
People still try to use that line of, reasoning, even though there is documented, no, we have video of you saying,
right,
blah, blah, blah.
Well, they can still argue that they didn't mean it in that way. And a lot of times that's true. Stuff gets taken out of context all the time.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, that's probably that was going to be the major downside to it that I can think of right now. I'm sure I could come up with some more.
The one that I was going to bring up is just general mental health of people. We talked a little bit about mental health last week, and how people, when they lose what they feel like is their purpose through their work or through their means of survival, because things are so easy now, that they kind of get lost in this, this web of, what am I going to do with my life? My life has no meaning because this reason or that reason. And I think that this part of it, the loss of privacy in trying to make a living that way, because they say, "Oh, this is how I'm going to do this." I feel like it's really going to have, it might not be as apparent now, but I think in the next 10 years, we'll see how much of an effect the internet career culture has on society, especially with Gen Z and everything, who the millennial generation grew up, like, we're the transition generation.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up before there was the internet and all that sort of stuff, and then we grew up with it. Yeah. Like, in its infancy, not grew up with it like how Gen Z does, where it's always there and it's all encompassing. Like, I remember before the internet, we had the internet at home. Oh, yeah. Before cell phones were the way that they are. Like, the early 90s was very much a different time from the late 90s in the early 2000s.
Yeah, we didn't have internet until I was probably 16, and then it was dial-up until I was, I don't know, 20 or something. Yeah.
But, you know, you got people growing up now who are using iPads and stuff at the age of 3 who can access the internet, do whatever they want, and, you know, there are kids who are on YouTube making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I really think that if we don't find a way to really hone in our expectations of that, that it'll have a lot more dire consequences, especially with mental health and young people. Because like I was talking before about that 13-year-old boy, if they see someone like Logan Paul as a role model, and then Logan Paul came out with a video where he went to a suicide forest in Japan and filmed a dead body, that's not good.
Yeah,
that's not good. I mean, that's partially the parents' fault, but that's also partially the culture that says, I'm going to film every aspect of my life. You know, these kids are growing up not understanding what privacy is. You know, we're already seeing that with, you know, Snapchat and all this sort of things, people taking pictures and everything. But and I wonder if the idea of privacy will just completely wither away in the next 10, 20 years. Or if we'll want to, like, recapture that.
Right.
And not be able to.
Yeah, that's a really good... I wonder the same things. I mean, I'm not particularly pessimistic about the stuff that we've been talking about, you know, the vlogs and the vloggers and the video game streamers. You know, I think that for the most part that stuff's fairly harmless. Or at least not any more harmful than, you know, the sort of careers that people have had forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a more general sense, I do worry about the lack of privacy and just the how the expectations have changed. Because, you're saying, even during our lifetimes.
Because I would even say that reality TV stars aren't the same thing as, like, vloggers.
Right.
Because, like, people would say, oh, that's real life, or they're just living their life. And I'm like, well, to a point, but a lot of that's scripted, and it's not real.
It's
someone who's got a camera in their house eating a bowl of ramen talking about something. That's literally real life.
Right. I mean, they can edit it, and, you know, we don't really need to get into that. But I do agree there's a different thing. But yeah, I do have quite a bit of pessimism about privacy going forward, and just younger people barely even understand the idea of privacy, and it just it does seem like it's not something that people think about. Young people. It's not something that young people think about. And yeah, I do see that as a serious problem. And I kind of hope that at some point, as the internet ages, I do hope that we learn how to handle it more responsibly, including privacy issues.
So that's something that I think we'll probably be revisiting. The longer that we do this, I think we might have more to talk about, especially with, like, Facebook being in the news a lot with their antitrust stuff and the power that they wield. And
I have Edward Snowden's book over there.
Oh, really? Did you see that he was on Joe Rogan?
I was watching that today, actually.
I was watching it last night.
Yeah.
But so we went in a weird direction from when we started, because it was we're going to talk about video games.
We didn't talk about video games a whole lot.
No, but I think we got to the conversation that I wanted to have about the societal implications of internet careers and the internet culture when it comes to that. But there's a lot of internet culture stuff that I'd like to talk about, like meme culture, cancel culture, and more broad terms. But
I would like to talk about that too. That's going in a little bit different direction than this conversation was. But yeah, we should definitely talk about that stuff at some point.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about that.
But for this time, do you have any closing thoughts or anything?
I don't think so. I think we've pretty much gotten to everything that I was thinking about when I kind of
Me too.
thought this topic over a couple times. There's some kind of like tangential stuff that we could do, but we'll save that for the future, I think.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Matt, and I've had a cold.
And this is Chad. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
You guys have a great day or night.
Talk to you next time.